Bamboo ceramic lights add a touch of zen to any space. Made of ceramic and inspired by bamboo, they resemble bundles of tropical grasses, but they're not exact replications. These light fixtures offer an artistic interpretation of an exotic element of the natural world. The ceramic casing starts out as a slurry of clay and water known as slip. Once mixed, the slip is piped into plaster molds. Each mold is filled to just below the brim. Over 3 hours, the clay thickens and congeals around the edges. The remaining liquid slip is poured out, leaving behind a clay casting which has a putty-like consistency. After leaving it to solidify further, the mold is disassembled, revealing the clay casting with the bamboo-like detail. During an overnight cure, the casting further solidifies and the colour lightens. A knife is then used to clean up the rough edges. A seam formed where the mould parts were joined is also removed. The entire ceramic casting is then sanded to smooth any remaining imperfections. Using a wet sponge, the casting is then washed. This softens the clay on the surface and gets rid of any minute scratches left from the sanding. Next, holes are cut in the back, one to install the light socket and the other to run wires to the electrical junction box. With the clay surface still moist, nodes or joints are then carved in the bamboo canes, and wide vertical lines are scored to create the effect of cracks that occur in bamboo naturally when it dries out. After firing the clay casting in a kiln and then cooling it overnight, it's become a strong, durable piece of ceramic. It's then inspected for imperfections before the painting process begins. First, a very light yellow paint is sprayed onto the ceramic. This gives the piece just a hint of colour and provides the desired undertone. Next, a green oil paint is mixed with thinners and then brushed into the grooves and notches. This will accentuate these areas. It's also brushed onto the edges of the top and bottom to better define the profile. Using a soft cotton cloth, some paint from the palette is blotted up and wiped on the ceramic. This both softens the brush strokes and gives the ceramic cane structure a hint of green. After inspecting the coverage, brown paint is then applied to the entire piece. This brown colour completely overpowers the green and yellow paint. The paint is then spread over the piece. Not only does this remove a lot of the brown paint, it also tones it down and subtly brings out the other colours. This produces colour variations and transforms the final piece. After a protective clear coat has been applied, the light socket is inserted and its wires are pulled through the hole and out of the back. The socket is secured in position at the rear with a nut. Finally, the bulb is screwed in place. And that completes this bamboo ceramic light fixture. Making it has taken roughly a week, and the final result is unique. So while providing illumination, it may also be an object of conversation. I just hope my pet panda doesn't try and eat it. Mind you, it'll be a light meal. Asphalt compactors are the heavy rollers of road construction. They're equipped with vibrating drums that weigh several tons. The sheer load in combination with the mechanical vibrations, compact a new road surface. This locks the aggregate particles together in order to provide a strong and stable road. The compactor vibrates as it applies weight to fresh asphalt. This removes air pockets that could ruin the road. To make this critical piece of road building equipment, a computerized plasma torch cuts into heavy gauge steel. The programs are selected that will guide the cutter. The torch cuts out the compactor's body panels, the plates used to make the rollers, and many other parts. Here, the front of the compactor frame is being welded together, which includes the attachment of the bracket plates for a pivot hinging steering system. Elsewhere in the factory, a steel plate is guided into a rolling machine. The machine forms the thick steel into the shell of a compactor roller. It takes a few passes through the machine to establish the correct radius. It's then checked to ensure it meets the required specification. The rolled steel is then transferred over a fixture, which holds bulkheads that will be in the correct position inside the shell. Both the fixture and the steel shell are then lifted onto a table where cables are wrapped around. The cables are secured in position with a steel pin. Brackets are placed behind the cables at the seam to protect them during the tack welding that's to come later. Chains are then fitted and tightened to ensure the shell is held firmly in position. Activated next is the squeezer. Hydraulically powered, this machine pulls the cables to close the gap in the shell. Then, while held tightly, the seam and bulkheads are tack welded from the inside. With the tack welds holding everything together, a robot completes the full welds on both the seam and the bulkheads. As the seam weld is large and protrudes from the shell, it's ground flush so that it will roll smoothly. After a thorough wash, it's moved into a paint booth to be sprayed first with epoxy primer and then urethane paint. The rollers spend 50 minutes in an oven to bake on the coatings, after which they're taken to the assembly line. Here, the rear half of the compactor frame is taking shape, where a hitch is being bolted in place. Then a hydraulic steering cylinder is attached to the hitch and secured to it with a thick steel pin. Guide pins are then screwed into the hitch. After running hydraulic hoses through to the front section, the rear section is then linked to the front. Next, the diesel engine is lowered into the front frame. It's anchored in position with thick bolts onto substantial engine mounts. A center pivot link provides a second connection between the front and back parts of the compactor. Then the pin is bolted in position. Next, the operator platform is lowered into position. This comes complete with the controls and a seat. The platform is bolted to the frame with bolts in the four corners. The compactor is now ready for the two rollers. They've been equipped with vibrating mechanisms since we saw them last. The rear roller is bolted in place, and then the lines for the hydraulic systems that drive it are connected. Lights are fitted to illuminate the road when working at night. After the second roller has been installed and its hydraulic and electrical lines connected, the rollers are calibrated to ensure they operate at the same speed. Finally, the pivot steering is checked. Then, it's time to roll out of here and hit the road.